With me now, senior counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom, Kate Anderson. Kate, good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, Kate, you, Alliance Defending Freedom, represented this wedding photographer. Talk to me first about this law. She's not even allowed to write on her website explaining why she would decline to participate or create art for a same-sex wedding?
Well, artists should be free to choose what messages they can promote, and that's the very heart of this case and what this law is trying to force Chelsey to do. She is a wedding photographer, blogger, and editor. She loves weddings, participating in them and photographing and blogging them. But this law comes into play and is going to try to force her to violate her core convictions by photographing and blogging in celebration of same-sex weddings. And you're absolutely right. The law also has a portion that actually prevents her from even speaking on her own website about her religious beliefs and how they impact her business. This should be very concerning for both people who agree with her beliefs and people who don't. The government shouldn't be able to step in and force somebody to speak a message that violates their convictions or prevent them from talking about the messages they want to promote.
Right. I mean, it seems like this should be a very cut and dry case. I mean, that's obviously unconstitutional to tell a religious person, hey, you're not allowed to voice what you believe as it pertains to what you do for work, especially when it's not a matter of a private business asking their employees, to speak with, in line with the company's values or something like that. This is a woman who owns her own business. Shouldn't this be just a matter of a quick overturn on the basis of free speech?
Absolutely, and it was a very strong decision from Justice Walker. I think you highlighted a key portion of that decision. We live in a country where we can tolerate people that have differences of opinion. The country is big enough for both views on the topic of marriage as well as other topics, and that's why free speech reigns on these types of issues. It's important that all of us are able to speak our beliefs freely.
So this is also a very similar case. I mean, we're now seeing cases like this on an ongoing basis, whether it was Jack Phillips and Masterpiece Cake Shop, whether it was Baronelle Stutzman and her floral shop. We've seen there was also a bed and breakfast, I believe, in upstate New York that dealt with the same thing. All practicing Christians who say their faith does not allow them to use their creative ability to create an expression that violates what they believe about marriage being between one man and one woman. The Supreme Court ruled on Jack Phillips and Masterpiece Cake Shop, but they ruled in that very narrow way, saying in his specific instance, he was targeted with religious animus from the state of Colorado. Is the Supreme Court going to have to take this up and rule on it on a larger scale so that we don't continue to see this kind of discrimination against Christians?
I think there will be cases going to the court in the coming months and years. There are certainly a number of cases, as you raised. And with Masterpiece Cake Shop, the situation there was so egregious as to the targeting of his Christian beliefs by the state of Colorado that the court stepped in and said they needed to handle that issue first. They needed to send a message to Colorado and other governments that you can't treat people poorly just because of their religious beliefs. So that's an important decision that certainly plays into what's going on in Chelsey's case as well as others. But the question about how free speech interacts here and the freedom of each of us to decide what messages we can promote, especially creative businesses and artists. That issue is still to go to the court, and I think there's a number of cases around the country that are heading in that direction.
And what do you expect with Chelsey Nelson? So this judge basically said this law cannot be enforced in her specific case. What happens to the law in general, and do you expect the other side to appeal this ruling?
Well, the court made an early ruling on this to ensure that Chelsey can operate her business according to her beliefs while the case continues through the courts. So the case is still at an early stage. It will continue to be litigated. We never know if the opposing counsel will decide to appeal or not, but that's certainly something that could be on the table in the coming weeks.
And one of the things that just strikes me, I mean, we cover cases similar to this on this show on an ongoing basis, but this law in Louisville is particularly egregious because it forbids her from even explaining her viewpoint. For example, that bed and breakfast that I mentioned, they found a creative way to bypass the law that would require them to host same-sex weddings at their, facility by saying a portion of our proceeds, we'll host anyone, they said, but a portion of our proceeds will go to pro-traditional marriage groups, meaning that would probably not be somewhere that a same-sex couple would want to get married. And they explained why they felt that way. But this law, it floors me that they don't even allow her to explain herself. I don't know how anyone could think they could get away with that. Kate, you can have the final word.
That is something that we're seeing in laws around the country, this ban on people even being able to talk about their religious beliefs in the context of their business and how that impacts the business. So this is certainly something that we challenge in this case and are continuing to challenge. It's a very disturbing trend. And again, it's something that people should be concerned about, whether they agree with Chelsey and her views on marriage or not.
Right.
If you have a government able to come in and tell you what you can say and what you cannot say, that's a problem.
Oh, it's definitely a problem, and you're absolutely right. This is not just a problem for Christians or people of any faith. This is a problem for everybody, because if a person, an elected official in a position of power, can tell you what you can and can't say, even if you agree with them right now, at some point there's going to be an elected official who you don't agree with who's going to infringe on your right to speak freely or practice your faith freely, and that would be wrong then, just as it's wrong now happening to Christians. Kate, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.